and welcome. My name is Irina Vidanova. I am a media entrepreneur and a business viability advisor at International Media Support. Today, we have an exciting discussion lined up on tactics for entrepreneurial journalism. Joining me is Dhimant Parekh, the founder and CEO of The Better India, the world's largest platform for positive narratives and a successful media enterprise. Stay tuned as we dive into the strategies that have driven The Better India remarkable journey. So let's start with this. What does it mean, in your view, to be an entrepreneurial media outlet?
Firstly, Irina, thanks for having me over and for having this conversation. For me, I think being entrepreneurial is very simply wanting to focus on growth constantly. You can start a lot of businesses, but if you're not really looking to constantly focus on growth and figuring out where your scale will come from, then you're not really being fair to the business you've started, right? Because there's so much potential as your business grows, as your venture grows, the kind of impact that you can have. So for me, entrepreneurial is about relentless focus on growth and hence trying to figure out all the time, all possible ways in which you can grow. Now, growth can be anything, right? Growth in media can be readership, growth can be revenues, growth can be impact or the change that you are leading and so on. But once you've defined your growth, how can you be entrepreneurial about identifying all different ways to scale up your growth? And I think for me, that's really what entrepreneurism is.
Great. And it's great that you touched on this idea or notion of growth, because often when we talk growth, we talk about numbers, but equally it's different for different types of media outlets and it's different for different types of markets. So could you maybe give a few examples besides the number of readership or users, what can be the indication of growth?
Yeah, this is where I kind of go back to when we started The Better India. For almost about the first 3 years, our analytics would show a very flat line of numbers, right? There was absolutely no increase or decrease happening. We were just showing flat. And if I had just looked at that and concluded that there is no growth, at the same time that we were looking at this data, we were also getting a lot of emails almost every single day from different readers telling us one particular story changed their life, or how they were really happy about us having featured an organization who they went and then donated money or they volunteered or so on. So our incoming emails from readers kept increasing every day, which is why I go back and say that choose what is growth for you. For us, because the intention of The Better India was to drive social change, the emails coming from people was a huge indicator that we are being read by the right kind of people. And we are growing because we just had many more people having conversations with us. But if I just looked at readership, because, hey, I come from, let's say, a media lens, and if no one's reading me, what's the point of doing this? For almost 3 years, we didn't have any growth in that number. So I think very, very important to know what is your core value. What are you really building this thing for? And if you are able to get indications that this is going in the right direction, that is growth for you.
But then another dilemma that I know many media publishers are facing is that most of the teams, they don't have this kind of business background or entrepreneurial startup background. Those are mainly journalists and editors. How do you nurture entrepreneurial culture in your media organization, the way of thinking as entrepreneur and looking at for these opportunities besides just producing quality content and delivering it?
No, I think I get asked that question a lot, especially in media, because most media ventures are led by people who come from strong media editorial backgrounds. So my answer to that is, look, your organization can become entrepreneurial only if you as a leader show that you are entrepreneurial. Now, what does that mean? That means that you're constantly trying out a bunch of different experiments. You're constantly encouraging failures because most experiments fail. And the ones that you start seeing are successful, you're starting to back them up, right? And the moment you do this, you will realize that your entire team starts backing you and they become entrepreneurial over a period of time. But the moment you as a leader say, hey, look, we have to only focus on doing great storytelling or great news reporting, forget everything else. Then what happens is your entire team, the content team, the journalists, all of that is only focused on that. So you've lost out on a momentum where you could have got all these guys excited about trying out new things all the time while doing your core business. So one thing is that you have personally have to be very experimental, very keen to try out new things, very keen to read what are the new trends and see what are the new businesses that I could launch, and be open to failure. Right. I think the beauty of the world we live in today, Arena, it's very easy to start something. Right. The cost to start a newsletter is zero. You could just go to any of these tools online and start a newsletter and then put a paywall to it again for no cost and then test it out whether people are paying you for your newsletters. And if it starts working, wow, you suddenly have a new property which you're able to monetize from your readers, and it's done. You can very easily build, let's say, a directory of service providers, of anything that's related to the area of your content. Or you could set up a forum for your core readers who can interact with the editorial. There are so many numerous ideas. All it needs is for us to go out there, put it out there, test it out, and see whether it's working or it's not working, right? So that's one thing. The other thing that I wanted to talk about is that many times we as leaders may not have the skill set to do this, or even the interest, right? Even though we know it's good. So in those cases, I would recommend to hire people who come in from an entrepreneurial mindset to help you launch this. And this can't be like any conventional, traditional employee hiring, because if you're looking for someone to be entrepreneurial, you want them to come in and have a bird's eye view and access to the entire organization, right? So we did a very interesting thing at the Better India. We launched a role called Entrepreneurs in Residence. So we said, look, we are hiring for people who want to be entrepreneurs in residence. You get to come inside the Better India, understand our work, and you're given a 3-month time frame to come up with as many ideas and show us pilot execution of these ideas. And if any of those work, we will take you on board and back you and scale up that business. Now, what this does is that, firstly, because it's an entrepreneur in residence, and you're not calling it a head of strategy or a chief of staff, but you're calling it entrepreneur in residence, it appeals to the people who are by nature entrepreneurial, right? So suddenly you've got all these guys waking up saying, yeah, I don't want a conventional job, but this is interesting. So you've attracted the right kind of crowd by positioning it this way. And they come in and you give them a free hand for 3 months. And we said, look, we're paying a stipend. They're not on salary. We're paying a stipend. It's a win-win for them because they get to build something inside a growing business. And if it works out, we've promised them that we're going to then, get them on board, set up their own business separately and get them going, right? So for them, it's a great opportunity for 3 months to focus on a particular sector, build something, and if it gets going, they know we'll back it. So now here's one way in which we solved for the challenge that, maybe we are very, very tied up with day-to-day operations. I need to also look at my editorial calendar, my content team, all of that. So we said, look, let's get people from outside. Let's be creative about it. So Entrepreneurs in Residence is such a great program to launch. And you don't need to stick to just one person. You can have 5 entrepreneurs in residence working on 5 different things. And then you are guaranteed to have 1 or 2 ideas which you like and which will take off. And so within 3 months, you've got an entrepreneurial setup going in your company.
Did you get any workable ideas of these fellows who you took on board?
Yeah, many actually.
How do you know that this opportunity is worth trying and not the other one? So you mentioned in the previous part some ideas of how you test ideas, but from your point of view as a publisher or as a CEO. So you've got these people who all generated some potentially great ideas, and how do you know which one is to take on, or two or three?
To this, I have a very sort of non-scientific answer. I think the really first filter that you need to apply is that are you personally excited about the idea, right? It may be the best of ideas. It may be like one of the biggest business opportunities. But if you are personally not excited about it, then I would say don't do it, because any new business idea that you start will require a lot of your time, attention, and mental focus. And if you are not excited about it enough, then it's not something you should pick. So before you get into, okay, yeah, there are so many customers for this, or there's such a big market, so much revenue potential, I think above all of that, you should first be very clear that, yes, this is a problem I would like to solve. And this is exciting for me. Once you've established that, I think everything else is just secondary. Then it's all about just figuring out what are the metrics, what numbers, what resources I will need. Many times it may be a business idea which might require a lot of capital, lot of money, and you may not have that money. So you may not want to take it up. There could be certain ideas that can help you grow your core business, and it may not require much money. So you might want to just kind of focus on that. So I think a lot of that will get decided by the constraints that you have. All of us have constraints, right? Either it's capital constraint or it's people constraint, and so on. So I think the second level gets decided by that and the metrics that you want to go after. But I for me, I think the first and foremost is, are you excited about solving and going after this problem? If that's not there, then don't do it.
I think I would like to emphasize, as a media entrepreneur myself, that it should also be about solving the problem, just like you said, that you have to be excited personally and it has to solve some problem for somebody else. And then, yes, it might have a chance. Absolutely. Talking about excitement and entrepreneurship, how do you ensure that this adjacent or spin-off business idea aligns with your mission as a media outlet? Does it have to be aligned, or it's not in your view? And if yes, then how do you not be taken away by some idea which is completely unrelated to who you are as a media brand?
That's a good question. And I think I'm a strong believer in the idea that anything you do has to be related and should come back to your core reason as to why you started the company. Otherwise, look, you could be running 5 different businesses. They have nothing to do with each other. That, to me, is not really what we're trying to do here. What we're trying to say is that you've started a media company. All right. Now you want this media company to grow. Conventionally, the only way people have seen media companies grow is through the areas of advertising revenue, or or user subscriptions and so on. But we all know that those are extremely time consuming and they take a whole lot of bandwidth and they're not very efficient, right? So then the question became, what are the business ideas that you can build on top of what you already have? And what do you already have? You have a media brand because people know you. You have a readership. You have a social media presence. How could you tie all of this together? And could there be other businesses that you could bring in other than the established ones like advertising and paid subscriptions? That's really the broad framework that we are playing here. And I think I'm trying to keep this more about media because that's the context with which we are talking about. If someone comes and tells me, "Hey, look, you're running the Better India. Do you wanna launch a automobile manufacturing plant?" And I'm like, there's nothing. There's no connection. That doesn't make any sense. But for us, Better India talks a lot about sustainability, talks a lot about innovations, and we realize that our readers really care about leading sustainable lifestyles. And hence we came up with a product called the Better Home, which was a range of home care products made completely of biodegradable ingredients. So plant-based enzymes, nothing that's harmful to the environment, ethically sourced, and all of that. And so complete alignment with the core vision of saying we want to bring change. And that's our core vision. And sustainability fits in. You also want to bring businesses that are able to leverage your core. So the Better Home was able to grow because it was leveraging the reach and the readership of the Better India. So there was complete alignment. Our readers were reading about sustainability. And here we said, look, by the way, we've got a range of sustainable products. Would you want to try it out? So now both businesses benefit from each other, right? Our content business gets to generate new streams of revenue, and the Better Home gets to grow really fast. Our e-commerce business gets to grow really fast because it has access to readership and reach. So you need to always think about being entrepreneurial, but launching businesses that are helping each other and those which necessarily tie down to your core. Because if you don't do that, it's extremely hard to build two different brands and to earn the trust of customers all over again for something which is completely unrelated. So then you're making it much harder for yourself.
Right. And how do you measure the potential of the market for a new product or a new service that you create? And of course, I mean, when people listen to this interview, they might think, of course, I mean, India is such a big market. And what if I'm in a small country with a small market and I offer even smaller niche product? How do I make sure that all the investment worth it, including time, of course, and resources?
No, I think that is important, and we always try and do a market estimation, size of the market estimation. Look, in any market that you go to, you are never going to be capturing 100% of the market, right? That's never going to happen. So we're always going to be, and since you're just starting off, you're always going to be in a small, very, very small percentage of market share that you're going to be into. While, yes, in India, we have the volumes, but at the same time, you're competing with so many more other brands, right? So the competition is also extremely high. I would basically say that as long as you're solving a true problem, which you can see will add value to your core business in terms of revenue or readership growth, I think you should go after it as you start and not let market constraints determine your initial step. What I mean by that is, like, are you able to launch something and measure over the next 6 months? Are you seeing month on month 100% growth? Are you doubling every month? If you're starting to see those kind of sort of this thing, then you will yourself be able to steer the business into markets that are larger. But if you just do the brainstorming on paper before you go out into the market, you will not get the feedback from the market. So I think, yes, market estimation is important, but it's just enough to know that, yes, this is not a five customer market. It is at least 500. And if it is that much, or 5,000, then sure, could I go and capture some value on it?
How do you finance your new enterprise? And maybe like let's try to break it down into different stages, from startup stage to maybe then growing it when you see that there is a potential. Where do you find resources to run on it? Because we all know that it will take time until it will start bringing profits.
I think there is no sort of one answer to this question. It depends a lot on where you are in the journey of building this business. When I look back, the initial part of us building the Better India was our savings, the savings that we had from before. And with the savings, we were able to build something which did not require any sort of people cost, because it was just me and my co-founder running it. So we used to keep our costs low. But we were very clear that our first milestone was going to be getting a company to come on board as a sponsor to show that this is possible to monetize. And the moment we were able to show that, yes, something like this can also earn revenues, we were then able to go to investors and show them that, look, this is what we're doing. This is the mission of the company. At the same time, we're able to monetize it. And hence, we were able to get investors to come on board. Once we got that, we were able to then scale up the content production, scale up our business teams, and so on. And then again, as we continued to grow, we realized that if we want to build e-commerce, we had to get a lot more capital, right, of different kinds. So we took we took a loan for funding that, because we were clear that if the e-commerce business takes off, it'll generate cash every month, and that could pay off parts of the loan. So now you have a very different kind of capital that we could bring in. We raised from an institutional investor, a venture capital fund, We raised more capital from them. So that became another source. And then, of course, your revenue start growing, and eventually your revenue start sort of covering for all your costs, right? And that's the sweet spot where you ideally want to be. I just want to kind of share one thing about how you could be entrepreneurial even when you raise money. When we started the Better India, we had a newsletter. I think about 300 people had subscribed to it. And then when we were wanting to raise some money, a small round of money, I actually went through all the networks that would help raise money. And I found a couple of networks that comprised of people focus on social impact and investing in social impact. And then I looked up some of the members there. And I found that there were a few of them had subscribed to our newsletter already. So my first sort of reach out was to them, saying that, hey, I knew they read us, but I would just reach out to say, hey, look, I represent the Better India. We're building something unique. Would you guys be open to having a conversation? And they were like, oh, of course, we know you. And we love the content that you send. Why don't you, schedule a call and we could set up something? So we met them and they were so convinced because they had already subscribed to our product. And then they became our ambassadors and they got in more other investors and convinced them. And they did our job of going out and raising money, right? So that's again where you could be smart about who do you go to and how do you kind of, help raise capital. So there are so many things there to unpack.
So let's say you found a brilliant idea which you're passionate about. You were able to launch it, and it looked like a very promising thing. But at some point, you start realizing that it's not growing, that it's not working the way you imagine, and maybe it's time to kill it. How do you know when this moment comes? As you also mentioned earlier, out of 20 ideas or enterprises, such startups, two maybe will succeed and the rest will not. So how do you know when and if to kill something that you already started?
Yeah, again, for me, like if you remember what I mentioned, right, like which idea to pick should be something that you are personally very excited about and is solving a problem. Similarly, if you stop liking to show up for work on the idea that you're working on and you stop liking it for 7 days in a row, then clearly that's not something you should be doing anymore. Because to me, I think irrespective of how the market is good, bad, people want your product, don't want your product. I think what really matters is whether you are personally excited to build it or not to build it. So how do you know that you should kill an idea? You will know because you will no longer want to get out of bed and work on that idea today. And if that happens continuously for a week, you know this is not something you should be doing.
And in terms of business indicators, even if you still feel passionate about it, but it stopped growing, whatever growth strategy you identified for yourself, how long do you wait?
Look, I think business indicators will always have to be navigated to find exactly where to take the business to, as long as you're passionate about it. So, for instance, we really were keen to launch an e-commerce business because we felt we need to bring products to the market. The initial metrics for us were how many people are, buying and how many people are sort of coming back every month and so on, right? So that kind of. But we launched it as a marketplace, so we got a whole bunch of small enterprises to sell their products on our platform. And we very quickly, and our metric was very clear: how much revenue we are helping these small businesses generate on our platform. So we have these small businesses; they're selling their products on our platform, and consumers are buying it. And our metric was how many of these small businesses we are helping them, scale. But what we realized is that consumers didn't want this very wide variety of products and stuff to buy from. And that is when we sort of said that, look, maybe we don't need to have every product under the sun listed on our platform. We looked at data and we saw that home care products were doing really well, organic home care products. And we said, look, we're only going to do this. So what did we do? We didn't kill the idea of e-commerce, but we navigated the business by saying that we're going to go really focused and we'll rebrand it to the Better Home. We will launch home care products. And then that became a lot easier for us. So I think business metrics are not rigid and fixed. Your vision and your goal or the value that you have is what is fixed. If you're clear that, hey, you know what, I want to build something that kind of makes a difference in the world. So that remains fixed. And then everything else is kind of you're navigating around it. So I don't think business metrics can ever tell you that you need to shut this. It just means that you're probably not building the right product. Maybe you need to change your product, or you're not marketing to the right audience. You change your marketing, or there isn't an audience for it, right? But that you will know whether the audience is not there very quickly. But if you're starting to see some flatline growth happen, then it's largely due to you tweaking the product or your marketing, and then kind of going from there. But killing an idea is always very clear. You no longer have conviction. You no longer enjoy working on it. That's when you really have to kill it.
How do you allocate human resources in your team or external for this new startup ideas in your media organization?
Yeah, no, that's a good question. Like I said, initially we bring in someone from outside to prototype, to do research, to validate all of that. Once we are clear that we have some direction, we then go back to our core team and see what is the output that we are okay to reduce. Because anybody focusing on something else means that what they were working on will have to reduce in terms of volume. So, for instance, let's say if it is someone who's focused on doing social media for your core media operation, right? Are we okay to reduce our social media output by 50% to try out something for the next 2 weeks in a whole new idea and see how that goes? So you should, because we were a small team with limited resources, we would be okay to pause, say, certain of our day-to-day activities, not pause, but reduce it in a way that it's not going to have a drastic impact, but it frees up some time for us to, let's say, 2 weeks, 3 weeks to try out something new. And if that really starts taking off, then you know that this is something you need to go after. And then you need to hire people to come in and kind of take that up from there. But initially, it's about moving people across ideas and being okay with having a reduced growth on your core business until you kind of figure out this. So you should be willing to take a hit of 2-3 weeks in terms of statistics and data, but give some resources here and kind of pull it off. And once this starts taking off, it becomes a lot easier. Then you're able to get investors to come in saying, like, sure, this works. Let's put in more money here. Or you'll be able to kind of say that, okay, you know what? Having more people on this new business is making more sense. Let's move a few people here. Let this kind of start. I think then a lot of the combinations open up. But initially, it's going to be allocating different resources to different projects and seeing what is taking off.
We talked about the founder to be excited about an idea, and that's only then you might have a successful startup business. But what about a team? So let's say you are super excited about something, but how do you buy your team in? What happens if they don't buy in, since especially if you need that help in the initial stages?
No, that's always a good question. In majority of the cases that the team you will have will be excited about one thing that they are working on. Like if someone's an editor, they would be excited about being an editor and they want to only do that, right? And I think the challenge then becomes, how do we get people to do so many different things because it's important and so on. The one way in which we tried to solve for this is that every month we would have a all hands, like a town hall meeting, where we would run through the company's numbers in terms of readership and revenues and kind of the graphs and all of that. So very transparent to everybody in the organization. And then I would make it very clear that, look, if we all want to grow, this path is not going to get us there, right? Do we really want to keep sort of going at such a slow rate that after 5 years we will only reach a certain position? Or do we all want to grow together, right? Do we have that aspiration to grow? And then suddenly everyone realizes that, wow, yeah, true. Yeah, we want to grow much faster than this, right? So then I become like, hey, look, if we have to do this, we will have to experiment. I don't have the answers of what is going to take us there, but we will have to experiment. All of us together will have to experiment and find the answers. But if we don't do this, then we're going to go this sort of flat line. And that's not exciting to me. If it's exciting for you, then, then I'm fine with it. And then you will suddenly notice people, they're saying, sure, yeah, I want that aspiration to grow. And the moment you do that, and the moment then you show them constantly the results of your experiments, That's very, very important. We've got an entrepreneur in residence. He or she has done something. We would present it to the entire organization. Saying that, look, guys, this is where we see this is going to go. If this works out, we could potentially be this big, right? And then suddenly you will see a lot of people wanting to volunteer for this and saying, great, let me help out with this, let me help out with that, and so on. So I think the key learning here is to be very transparent with your entire team and showing them what are you chasing after, what are you going after, what is the potential growth that can happen if you do things differently, and what is it that they can see their own career path if you don't do anything. And 9 out of 10 times people will tell you that yes, they want to grow. Everybody wants to grow. And if you're able to show them that, then this is the path, come along, it's incredible. Everybody comes along.
If something doesn't work the way you expected, then there is a fear, might be a fear of failure or an actual failure. So let's maybe also talk it through how you talk about it, how you present it to your team if some ideas failed or business didn't take off. And also maybe let's try to explain this again, a term which is used very often. What does it mean to fail forward so that you learn from your failures? But how do you understand this? Maybe also give some examples of failing forward.
Yeah. No, I think firstly, a failure should never be a sad event that you send out a sad email to everybody saying, we tried this, guys, it didn't work. Right from the beginning, if you are bringing the culture that you're going to do 10 experiments every 6 months, or every quarter you have 4 experiments going on, and instead of calling it as this is a failure or that is a failure, we can say, look, 3 of these didn't work, this one is showing promise, we're going after this. And then suddenly everybody realizes that it's not about failure at all. It's about just trying out as many things as possible because we want to achieve our goals much faster, right? So the lesser number of experiments we do, the slower we will grow. The moment you make these as experiments and not as success/failure, it changes the whole mood of the company. So we've had so many ideas that didn't work, that didn't take off. We put in a lot of effort, but it's fine. Nobody even feels bad about it because people know that these are all stepping stones to sort of where we are today. Right? So it's been a 9-year, 10-year journey. I think we've never ever looked at our failures as a sad moment, sent out a mail, taken people out for a drink because it didn't work out. No, it's like, hey, it was fun. We learned something. This didn't work. Maybe this is what we should do. Let's move to this. And people are just excited about doing it all the time because you're constantly talking about the end goal. The end goal is fast growth to reach a path which is much faster than what other media companies can sort of take you there. So I don't think we've seen this failure thing being this thing. I think, but it's very important, you as a leader not really getting bogged down yourself by failures.
Great. So in the end, I would like to ask you if, of course, there is such a thing, but maybe you have a checklist or some suggestions for one of how to know when your media organization is ripe for being entrepreneurial or becoming one, especially if you are, let's say, more of an old school or older media organization, but then you feel that there is this bug for becoming more entrepreneurial. How do you know that it's time to go for it?
I think it is time to go entrepreneurial on day 0, the day you decide to start a media company or the day you've started a media company. You have to be entrepreneurial. Let's face it, a media company can no longer rely on only one stream of revenues or money, because that's the future we live in. If you completely rely on only one particular stream or source, your risk of getting shut is very, very high because market dynamics can change. People may decide not to advertise with you anymore and take their money to whatever, some new TikTok that's come on the block, right? And you've lost it. And then suddenly you have nothing. So you have to build resilience in your company by having at least 3 to 4 different sources of revenue of equal strength. The sooner you start working on those, the sooner you start building those streams, the longer you will survive and the faster you can grow. So I just think that you have to be entrepreneur on day 1, the day you start the company. And if you haven't started doing that, start putting a lot of thought on that right now, because it's not just about telling great stories. If you can't survive, then all of this effort of these great stories is for nothing. So the goal is that you need to be able to survive. You need to be able to invest in yourself. You need to be able to invest in your company to do 10 times or 100 times more than what you're doing today, right? So be entrepreneurial from day one. I mean, try out this. The cost of failure is so low today. It takes you 5 minutes to launch a web page. It takes you like 2 minutes to send out a newsletter to people. So I think very, very important to start establishing multiple business models right from day one. The other good thing is that you can always look around you and see so many successful media companies in the world from where you can actually get a lot of ideas. Not everything might fit in your country or your market, but if you just look around, there'll be so many ideas that you can definitely adapt for your readers and for your country.
Thank you so much. It was a very rich conversation.
Thank you so much.